radar stations in southern Iran began tracking unidentified aircraft moving toward several military sites. Within minutes, alarms spread across air defense units, and reports of explosions began coming in from facilities tied to Iran's missile and nuclear programs. For decades, tension between the United States and Iran had been managed through sanctions, proxy conflicts, and political pressure. Direct military confrontation was usually avoided. But events like these showed how fragile that balance had become. To understand how the relationship reached this point, it helps to look back several decades, to a time when Iran was not an enemy of the United States at all. In the middle of the 20th century, Iran was one of Washington's most important partners in the Middle East. Its location placed it along the southern edge of the Soviet Union, and its oil reserves were critical to global energy markets. For American strategists during the Cold War, keeping Iran aligned with the West was seen as essential. That alignment was tested in the early 1950s. Iran's prime minister at the time, Mohammad Mossadegh, moved to nationalize the country's oil industry, which had long been controlled by foreign companies. The decision threatened British and American economic interests. In 1953, the United States and Britain supported a covert operation that removed Mossadegh from power and restored the authority of the Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. The Shah ruled as a close American partner and received strong military and economic support from Washington. For the United States, Iran became a pillar of its regional strategy. But inside Iran, resentment slowly grew. Many Iranians believed their country's political future had been shaped by outside powers. That resentment built for decades. By the late 1970s, economic problems, political repression, and public anger weakened the Shah's government. In 1979, a mass revolutionary movement forced him from power. The new leadership that emerged was very different from the government that came before it. Guided by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the Islamic Republic defined itself partly through resistance to foreign influence, especially American influence. Later that same year, Iranian students stormed the United States Embassy in Tehran and took 52 Americans hostage. The crisis lasted 444 days and shocked the world. Diplomatic relations between the two countries were severed and have never been fully restored. From that point forward, mistrust shaped nearly every interaction between Washington and Tehran. During the 1980s, the rivalry expanded further when Iraq invaded Iran. The war lasted 8 years and caused enormous destruction on both sides. The United States provided support to Iraq during the conflict because American leaders believed Iran's revolutionary government could destabilize the region if it gained too much influence. Iran drew its own lessons from the war. Isolated and under pressure, its leadership began building relationships with armed groups and political movements across the Middle East. These networks gave Tehran influence beyond its borders and allowed it to challenge American allies without confronting U.S. forces directly. By the 1990s, the conflict between the United States and Iran was no longer limited to diplomacy. It had become a wider struggle for influence across the region. In the early 2000s, a new issue pushed tensions even higher. Iran expanded its nuclear program, arguing that it needed nuclear technology for energy and scientific development. The United States and several European countries believed the program could eventually lead to nuclear weapons. Sanctions were imposed on Iran's economy, limiting its access to global markets and financial systems. The goal was to force Tehran to scale back its nuclear work. Years of negotiations followed. In 2015, an agreement known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was signed between Iran and several world powers. Under the deal, Iran accepted strict limits on its nuclear program in exchange for relief from many sanctions. For a time, the agreement reduced tensions. But in 2018, the United States withdrew from the deal and restored economic sanctions on Iran. Washington argued that the agreement did not address Iran's missile program or its support for armed groups in the region. Tehran responded by gradually increasing parts of its nuclear activity again. The fragile structure that had been holding the conflict in check began to break down. At the same time, incidents between the two countries became more dangerous. Oil tankers were attacked in the Persian Gulf. Military drones were shot down. Armed groups linked to Iran launched attacks on bases used by American forces in Iraq. The most dramatic moment came in January 2020. A U.S. drone strike near Baghdad International Airport killed General Qassem Soleimani, one of the most powerful military leaders in Iran and the head of the Quds force. For Iran's leadership, the killing crossed a line. Within days, Iran launched ballistic missiles at bases in Iraq where American troops were stationed. Although casualties were limited, the exchange showed how close the two countries had come to direct war. Since then, the rivalry has continued through a pattern of pressure and retaliation. Sanctions tightened, cyber operations increased. Israel carried out strikes on Iranian targets in Syria, while Iranian-backed groups continued to challenge American forces and partners across the region. Each action reinforced the belief on both sides that the other posed a serious threat. For the United States, Iran's missile program, regional alliances, and nuclear work created fears that Tehran could reshape the balance of power in the Middle East. For Iran, decades of sanctions, military pressure, and foreign involvement created a belief that the United States ultimately sought to weaken or remove its government. These opposing views have trapped the relationship in a cycle that is difficult to break. Every move meant to increase security on one side often looks like preparation for attack on the other. Today, the rivalry between Washington and Tehran continues to shape politics and security across the Middle East. Regional powers adjust their strategies around it. Global energy markets react to it. Armed groups and governments across several countries are affected by it. What began as a political crisis in the early Cold War gradually turned into one of the most enduring strategic rivalries of the modern era. And despite moments of negotiation and brief periods of calm, the structure of the conflict remains largely unchanged. Decisions made decades ago still influence the choices leaders make today, and the consequences of those decisions continue to ripple across the region.